And when you say documentation, give me an example. Like, what do you mean by documentation?
Yeah. So one, just, you know, whether you use document like Google Docs or Google Spreadsheets, having your calendars, your promo calendars, your goals for your different campaigns, even your creative briefs. All these types of things can be fed into your systems to help it understand better around, hey, you know, I'll use a generic example, but last year, this is how your uh, sales were running on your site during this time. This year, you had these sales running, let's just say it's 30% off last year during this time. You got 20% off this year. And you may be thinking to yourself, why are my flows not performing as well? Or why are my campaigns not performing as well? Well, if AI doesn't know that there was a difference in the sale discount, everything else was consistent, then it's not going to give you an accurate understanding of like what's going on, because yeah, people are going to buy more if they get a bigger discount, right? So um, that's exactly. And that brings up another point of like a big effort that we have at Blue Style that we're, is understanding and having our systems all be able to talk and, be tied together. And it's really helpful when you do that, because then you get more of a clear picture of what's happening on your storefront, what's happening in your retention program.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is something we've been working on a lot is integrating those systems together, because at the end of the day, it's like, look, if you run to your example, right, you run a very specific discount or promo through email, right, and that's not reflected on site. You take somebody you're giving them a 20% off in the email. They land on a product page and there's no communication around that same offer, nothing that sort of reiterates or is congruent between the email experience and the storefront experience. That campaign could flop simply because of something that wasn't done in the storefront. Doesn't mean it wasn't right, doesn't mean it wasn't segmented right, doesn't mean it wasn't written correctly, doesn't mean it wouldn't have performed well, but there's this other piece that's missing in the chain. And one, how do we make sure that teams are working together across the same brand to ensure a very congruent customer experience? But also to your point around like analysis, if you were to go back and analyze that campaign, and all it had was Klaviyo data and understanding of your campaign calendar and goals of the campaign, and it had no idea of what was happening on the storefront side, you're missing a huge piece of context that's not taken into account as a part of that analysis. And the insight you're going to gather from AI, whichever model you're using, is going to be wrong, right? Yeah, it's super interesting. All right, so I think that's fascinating. Let's talk about like, where do you think this is going? Like, I always find this kind of fun to think about. Where's the puck going, and how as marketers should we be thinking about building towards where the future is going? And sort of like from my perspective, I'm constantly thinking about, okay,